Thousands of Mexican-American students across East Los Angeles walked out of their classrooms. They risked punishment, arrest, and even violence to demand something that many took for granted, a proper equal education. They were not just walkouts, it was a revolution. For the first time, Chicano youth challenged a system that held them back for generations, sparking a movement that would redefine the fight for educational equality in America. Tired of discrimination, overcrowded schools, and a curriculum that ignored their history, these young people walked out, demanding respect, representation, and reform. Chicano students stood up to challenge an education system that had long silenced them, a system that had made many attempts to separate them from their culture and identities. Many parents and activists stood proudly beside them, seeing courage in student defiance and hopes for change. Yet, school officials, officers, and community leaders saw rebellion, reacting with resistance and violence. Their protests became one of the first large-scale student-led civil rights movement in American history. Chicano students in East Los Angeles experienced decades of discrimination in the public education system, with a lack of bilingual programs, unreasonable punishment, and neglect, causing the 1968 Chicano school walkouts as a response to the inequalities in the American education system, becoming a necessary reform movement that demanded equality for students and was revolutionary in uniting thousands of youth for civil rights, even as school officials and authorities attempted to silence the movement.
Racism in the United States during the 1960s was severe, characterized by corruption, violent, often deadly social backlash, and deeply entrenched systemic inequalities for all people of color. Students fighting for change was nothing new in the United States. Especially during the 1960s, on February 1st, 1960, 4 college students took a stand against segregation in Greensboro, North Carolina, where they refused to leave the Woolworth's lunch counter without being served. Over the next several days, hundreds of people joined their cause in what became known as the Greensboro sit-ins. After some were arrested and charged with trespassing, protesters launched a boycott of all segregated lunch counters until the owners caved and the original 4 students were finally served where they'd first stood their ground. Students of color, particularly African Americans, were catalysts for equality through nonviolent protests, sit-ins, and freedom rides. Following the 1960 Greensboro sit-ins, students found SNCC, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, to organize, directing sit-ins, voter drives, and protests, making young people a central force in the movement. In the late 1960s, students of color in California faced significant, often severe, racial separation and discrimination, despite the legal end of mandated school segregation. In school, Chicano students faced a lot of discrimination by teachers. Classrooms were in poor condition, overcrowded, and students had less resources than other white classrooms. There were also not many teachers that supported the students of color. The education system for Chicano students was usually focused on preparing them for manual labor and trades. Girls were discouraged from pursuing an education. Some teachers didn't even bother teaching them, expecting them to become pregnant instead. Chicano students wished for more diversity in the teachers and counselors, bilingual educational programs, along with an end to racist practices such as the banning of speaking Spanish at school. Early protests and the continuous fight for the rights of students of color laid the groundwork for the larger and more widely known 1960 Chicano blowouts in Los Angeles, where students staged massive walkouts to demand educational reform like the past students in history.
In the early morning of March 6, 1968, students from Lincoln High School ran up the main entrance and started yelling, "Walk out 10 o'clock." Many students were hesitant on walking out at first, waiting for a spark of action to occur. Then, doors started opening and hundreds of students streamed out of Lincoln High School. Around the same time, nearby schools began to walk out. Some teachers watched in shock as thousands of students rushed outside together. Teachers would try to obstruct the students' exit and keep them in class. Once outside, students immediately started organizing themselves into marching lines and small groups. They used loudspeakers and street cones to make their chants louder. Handmade signs and banners went up instantly, each one with a short, clear demand. The movement spread by word and by visual examples.
The educational process of Mexican Americans for over 20 years in East Los Angeles and throughout the Southwest has been disrupted by its failure to communicate with the Mexican American. That is the disruption. When 57% of the students at Garfield drop out year after year, there has to be a problem. We're not operating in a vacuum. There's social injustice.
The streets were filled with noise and movement. Students marched in groups, chanting together and waving their signs high. Some would constantly repeat "walk out" over and over again. Their marchers quickly caught the attention of news crews, local people, and the police. Some students were beaten and violently pushed. Others would run over fences or hide in alleys to avoid getting arrested. Reporters and photographers captured images of students confronting police lines and in some cases being shot or detained. Despite the police presence and with tensions high, students kept protests organized. Older students and recent graduates often took the coordination roles. The daily routine of leaving class and marching meant that the walkouts weren't a one-time thing, but a continuing citywide protest that took the span of over a week. Walkouts were not limited to one location. Simultaneous actions at multiple schools created a rolling effect, with gatherings popping up across neighborhoods. The community saw the struggle students were facing and were willing to fight with them.
Talking is not getting us anywhere. We want some action, sir. I mean, really. No, we're going to be united. We're going to fight for what we're going to get. That's it.
Parents, clergymen, and activists joined in on the walkouts, raising the amount of participants and support. During the largest gatherings, teachers like Sal Castro were present at the edge of these crowds. He reminded students that their voices mattered and that change came from standing up for what was right.
Most teachers approach the Mexican with a negative attitude and that you have nothing to give to me. I am going to make you an Anglo come hell or high water.
No matter what police did, even with arrests and pushbacks, the students' chants, tactics, and messages never stopped. The walkouts kept their power through every chant, every march, and every student who refused to stay silent.
The 1968 East Los Angeles walkouts marked a pivotal moment for the Chicano students, creating changes that helped initiate significant short and long-term impacts. Sal Castro and the other 13 organizers of the walkouts had faced charges for their involvement. They were known as the East Side 13. Their group included community activists and students. The LAPD had actually sent undercover police to infiltrate and spy on the organizations. They had all been jailed for supposedly disrupting school activities. Their imprisonment helped fuel the determination of the community for the demands of social justice and educational reform. Chicano Studies was started the same year in 1968, when California State University, Los Angeles established the first Mexican American Studies department. The academic field grew out of the blowouts that had occurred earlier that year. The Los Angeles School District also received reforms in schools. Bilingual bicultural education became compulsory. The district established in-service education programs to teach staff Spanish and increase their understanding of Mexican history, traditions, and culture. These changes were part of a larger effort to provide courses that reflected Mexican American history and culture. Over the following decades, more Mexican Americans moved into leadership positions like vice principals and principals within LAUSD. The Brown Berets, a Chicano activist group, was given wide recognition with their contributions in the organization of the walkouts. These groups showed the power and unity of Chicanos through activism and the challenges they face for a better impact. California offers numerous programs for Spanish-speaking students, including dual language immersion (DLI) and newcomer programs at the K-12 level. Newcomer programs provide support for recent immigrants, focusing on academic progress and English language development while valuing students' cultural and linguistic backgrounds. Going forward, the long-term impact of Chicano walkouts has led to a higher education access for more Chicano graduates in both high school and college, significantly increasing Mexican American enrollment in colleges.
The 1968 Chicano school walkouts marked a turning point in the fight for educational justice and civil rights in America. What began as a student protest in East Los Angeles classrooms grew into a powerful movement that challenged deep-rooted discrimination and demanded long-overdue reform. The courage of those students inspired generations to speak out against inequality, proving that young voices could spark lasting change. Chicano students fought their way to fair rights by walking out of their schools and protesting in the hopes of a better education. In return, students experienced violence and criticism during their battle for better opportunities. Students faced discrimination among peers and staff. Expectations were low and strict disciplinary measures were brought upon Chicano students. The blowouts were a reflection of their frustrations and anger. LAPD used unnecessary violence and unjustified arrests to try and minimize their voices. Yet, despite negative reactions, the Chicano student movement gained widespread attention and support. The blowouts will remain in Chicano history and will be remembered as a pivotal moment in the fight for educational justice and cultural recognition.